Before we wade into the deep waters of today's episode, I want to quickly ask that if you enjoyed the show, please make sure you're following us on whichever podcast platform you're using right now. It helps us grow more than you know. And to keep the conversation going between episodes, come hang out with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Cogito Ergo Pod, where I post deep dives, bite-sized esoteric history, and behind-the-scenes content. When we hear the word Gnosticism, our minds usually jump straight to the fringes of early Christianity. We think of the Nag Hammadi library, secret gospels of Thomas and Judas, and Greek philosophical terms like the demiurge or the pleroma. These are the kinds of ideas and subjects we have covered so far when we've looked at Valentinian, Sethian, and Basilidian Gnosticism. But Gnosticism didn't just emerge fully formed out of early Christian debates. Its roots dig much deeper, tangled in the rich, complex, and highly experimental soil of first-century Judea and the Jordan Valley. Hello, and welcome to Cogito Ergo Pod, the show where we discuss, delve, and dissect theology, philosophy, mysticism, and the esoteric. I'm your host, Daniel, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we are looking at Judean-Israelite Gnosticism, specifically the baptismal and esoteric sects that flourished on the margins of mainstream Judaism and early Christianity. We'll be looking at the only Gnostic religion that still survives today, the Mandaeans, the towering angelic visions of the Elkesaites, and the enigmatic Kentaeans. Now grab your notebooks, let's dive in. To understand where Israelite Gnosticism comes from, we have to look at the Levant around the 1st century BCE to 2nd century CE. This was an era of intense apocalyptic expectation. The Second Temple in Jerusalem was the center of Jewish worship, but not everyone agreed with how it was run. You have sectarian groups like the Essenes, whom we know from the Dead Sea Scrolls, pulling away into the desert, forming their own communities, and obsessing over ritual purity, angels, and a cosmic war between light and darkness. Within this environment, the Jordan River Valley became a hotbed for what scholars call Baptist movements. And I don't mean modern Baptists. I mean groups who believed that frequent, sometimes daily immersion in living or flowing water wasn't just for physical cleanliness, but for spiritual salvation and the washing away of cosmic impurity. Over time, some of these Jewish and Israelite fringe groups experienced a theological shift. When apocalyptic hopes failed, especially after the Romans destroyed the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE, the kingdom of God shifted from an earthly political expectation to a cosmic internal one. Salvation became about Gnosis, direct, experiential, secret knowledge. They began to view the material world not as the creation of a loving supreme God, but as a flawed prison built by lower angels or a lesser creator. Let's look at how this played out, starting with a group that has miraculously survived against all odds. If you want to look a true ancient Gnostic in the eye today, you don't need a time machine. You look to the Mandaeans. They are the last surviving continuous Gnostic religion from antiquity. The word Manda literally translates to knowledge in their Eastern Aramaic dialect. They are, by definition, Gnostic, but their origins are firmly rooted in that Judean-Israelite Baptist milieu we just talked about. According to their own historical text, the Haran Gawati, the Mandaeans originally lived in the Jordan Valley, but sometime in the 1st or 2nd century CE, facing severe persecution, likely from Orthodox Jewish authorities and emerging Christian groups, they fled east. They migrated into the Parthian Empire, settling in the marshlands of southern Mesopotamia, in what is today southern Iraq and southwestern Iran. There, in the protective isolation of the marshes, their theology crystallized. The Mandaeans revere Adam, Seth, Noah, Shem, and especially John the Baptist, whom they call Yohanan, as their greatest and final prophet. Conversely, they reject Abraham, Moses, and Jesus as false prophets who corrupted the true teachings. For Mandaeans, the universe is strictly and beautifully dualistic. There is the world of light, ruled by the supreme deity, Haya Rabbi, the great life, and the world of darkness, a realm of chaos and material entrapment ruled by the demonic entity called Ptahil, who created the physical world. Humans are a tragic hybrid. Our physical bodies belong in the world of darkness, but our souls are divine sparks from the world of light, trapped in flesh. Their central text is the Ginza Rabbah, the Great Treasure, a massive, brilliantly complex compilation of cosmology, prayers, and theology. If you were to open a physical copy, you'd find it's divided into two parts. The right Ginza, which deals with theology and the living, and the left Ginza, which is printed upside down relative to the right, and deals entirely with the afterlife and the soul's ascent. They also have the Drasa de Iahia, or the Book of John, detailing the life of John the Baptist from their perspective. So, how does a Mandaean free their divine spark? Through water. The core of Mandaean religious life is the Masbuta, their baptismal rite. It must take place in yardna, or flowing living water. This isn't a one-time initiation. It's a repeated sacrament that reconnects the soul to the world of light. If you were to witness a Masbuta, you would see the practitioner and the priest, called a Talmida, dressed entirely in rasta, a pure white multi-piece garment representing angelic clothing. The priest, holding a staff of olive wood, submerges the person completely. They are anointed with sesame oil, partake in a sacramental meal of bread and water, and conclude with the kushta, the ritual handshake of truth between the priest and the newly baptized. But baptism is for the living. What happens when you die? Mandaeans have incredibly elaborate death rituals, the most important being the Mass Quita, or the Mass of Ascent. When a person dies, their soul must journey back to the world of light, but the path is guarded by demonic tollhouses, planetary watch stations, ruled by dark archons trying to drag the soul back down. The Masquita rituals, performed by the priests over several days, provide the soul with the spiritual armor and passwords needed to bypass these demonic guards and safely return to Hai Rabbi. Tragically, though, this incredibly rich ancient tradition is currently facing an existential crisis. Up until the late 20th century, there were roughly 60 to 70,000 Mandaean living mostly in Iraq and Iran. But of their reverence for John the Baptist, they were historically afforded protection under Islamic rule, as the Sabians mentioned in the Quran. But the 2003 invasion of Iraq and the ensuing chaos shattered their world. As a pacifist religion whose adherents are forbidden to carry weapons, they became easy targets for extremists, insurgents, and later ISIS. They faced horrific campaigns of kidnapping, murder, and forced conversion. Because Mandaeanism is strictly ethno-religious, meaning you cannot convert to it, you must be born to Mandaean parents. Forced conversions are devastating to their numbers. Today, the vast majority of Mandaeans have fled their ancestral homeland. It's estimated that fewer than 3,000 remain in Iraq. The rest have forced a massive global diaspora. If you go to Sydney, Australia, or parts of Sweden, or cities in the US like San Antonio, Texas, you will find resilient Mandaean communities building new mandi, their places of worship, near rivers, striving to keep their ancient Aramaic language, their mastubas, and their profound Gnostic heritage alive in the 21st century. While the Mandaeans survive, other groups faded into the sands of history, known to us only through the horrific writings of the early church heresiologists, church fathers whose sole job was to catalogue and debunk rival sects. One of the most fascinating of these lost groups is the Elkesaites. Around 100 CE, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Trajan, a man named Elkesai appeared in the Parthian Empire, claiming to have received a new revelation. And this wasn't a quiet whisper in the dark. According to the Christian writer Hippolytus, Elkesai claimed he received a massive sacred book from an angel who was precisely 96 miles tall, accompanied by a female angel of the same terrifying proportions. The male angel represented the Son of God, and the female the Holy Spirit. Elkesaites were a deeply syncretic Jewish Christian Baptist sect. They kept the Jewish law, faced Jerusalem to pray, practiced circumcision, and observed the Sabbath. But their theology was highly esoteric. They believed that Christ was a recurring, transmigrating spirit who had appeared in Adam, then in other patriarchs, and finally in Jesus. Their primary source of salvation, however, was not the crucifixion. It was, you guessed it, water. They practiced repeated baptisms for the forgiveness of sins, and even for the healing of physical ailments like dog bites or demonic possession. They were highly reliant on astrology and magic, invoking the elements, sky, water, holy spirits, angels of prayer and oil, as witnesses to their rituals. The Book of Elkesai is lost to us today, existing only in fragments quoted by Hippolytus and Epiphanius, but their influence was vast. In fact, many scholars believe that the young prophet Mani, who would later found the world religion of Manichaeism, grew up in an Elkesaite community. Next we move to a group shrouded in even deeper mystery, the Kentaeans, also spelled Kanteans or Quanteans. When you study esoteric history, you often run into ghost sects, groups mentioned briefly by ancient writers that leave historians pulling their hair out, trying to figure out who they actually were. The Kentaeans fit this bill perfectly. They are mentioned by the 8th century Syriac writer Theodore Bar Koni, as well as the Islamic scholar Ibn al-Nadim. Geographically, they were situated in the Mesopotamian basin, sharing the same spiritual real estate as the Mandaeans and the Elkesaites. Historically, the Kentaeans seem to have been the localized syncretic Baptist movement that bridged the gap between Jewish Israelite esoteric traditions and early Manichaeism. Some heresiologists claimed they were founded by a figure named Cantor, while others conflated them with the Quaquites, another obscure Syriac sect. What little we know suggests they practiced water purification rituals and held a dualistic cosmology. They are vital to our story not because we have volumes of their writings, we have virtually none, but because they prove a crucial point. The ancient Middle East wasn't neatly divided into Judaism and Christianity. It was a vibrant, chaotic ecosystem of dozens of micro-religions, all experimenting with the concept of Gnosis, angelic intermediaries, and salvation through the mysteries of water. Judean-Israelite Gnosticism is a reminder that religion is rarely born in a vacuum. Before the grand theological systems of the 2nd and 3rd centuries, there were peoples standing waist-deep in the Jordan River, looking up at the sky and deciding that the world they saw wasn't all there was. Whether it was the Mandaeans seeking the world of light, or the Elkesaites measuring the height of angels, they were all searching for Gnosis, the knowledge that sets you free. But why does any of this matter to us today, sitting here, listening in the 21st century? First, because history is almost always written by the winners. When we only read the orthodox mainstream accounts, we get a sanitized, black and white version of the past. Exploring these fringe sects reminds us that the ancient world was just as messy, experimental, and spiritually hungry as our world is today. It completely dismantles the idea of monolithic, unchanging religions and shows us that the early boundaries between Judaism, Christianity, and paganism were incredibly blurry. Beyond that, in a modern era where we often feel disconnected, overwhelmed by the chaos of the material world, and anxious about our place in the universe, the core Gnostic impulse is surprisingly relatable. It's the deeply human desire for direct, unmediated experience, the hope that beneath the flaws of the physical world, we carry a spark of something divine. And practically speaking, understanding these traditions highlights the urgent need to protect endangered cultural heritage. When we learn about the Mandaeans, we aren't just looking at a museum exhibit of the ancient past. We are looking at a living, breathing community whose ancient wisdom is literally fighting for survival right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If you loved this episode, please do me a massive favor. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you are listening right now. Leaving a 5-star rating and a quick review helps new listeners find the show and allows us to keep making deep dives like this. And don't forget to join our community online. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Cogito Ergo Pod. Send me a message. Let me know what obscure sect or philosophical puzzle you want us here to discuss next. Until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and I'll speak to you again soon.